Hi, and welcome back to Wounded on Sixes. Today we're going to be taking a look at the Adeptus Mechanicus units and ranking them in a tier list. This is going to be an updated tier list from the one that we did back in January. We're going to go through each one of the units in the codex, and we're going to be ranking them according to how they stack up in the meta today. So we're going to be ranking them as auto-includes, which means they're basically in every single Adeptus Mechanicus list that you build. A great choice means they work in a lot of different lists and a lot of different detachments, although they may not be in every list. Good in the right detachment means that they are a decent unit if you're using the correct rules. Mid means they're not that great of a choice unless you have a very specific reason for using them. And dusty means they rarely leave your shelf. So let's go ahead and get started with the Adeptus Mechanicus characters. First up, we have Belisarius Cawl, and Belisarius Cawl has really improved as the 10th edition has moved along here. He has gone down in points since the last time we ranked him. He's definitely benefited from a lot of the changes that the Adeptus Mechanicus have gotten, and he's very easy to use. He's decent in melee, decent in shooting, and also provides a lot of support to the army. He can give hit rerolls of 1. He can also turn into Battleline, which basically turns on a lot of different abilities on your data sheets in Adeptus Mechanicus. So I think there's a crap ton of utility with a unit like Belisarius Cawl, and I think that he's honestly a great choice. You're probably not putting him in every single list, but any list that you put him in, you're going to get your 130 points out of him. So I think that's why he belongs in great choice. Then after that, we have the Scutari Marshal, and I used to be very partial to Scutari Marshals, and they're not bad. I mean, they do have some decent abilities. My problem with them is that Scutari are just not as deadly as they used to be, and the Marshal's really good at making them better at killing stuff. Yes, against lighter infantry Scutari are, but I find that I'm including a Marshal less and less unless I'm running a lot of different Scutari, or I'm in the Hunter cohort, because I think in the Hunter cohort they're a must-have because you need them to put the enhancements onto. So for that, I'm just going to put him in good in the right detachment, because I don't think you're going to be building him into a lot of lists, but anytime you're building a Hunter cohort list, you're going to be building the Marshal into that. After that, we have the Tech Priest Manipulus, and I'm actually pretty high on the Tech Priest Manipulus. He allows the unit that he's leading to get lethal hits. He also gives you a once per game 4-up invul for the unit that he's leading, which is really nice. I like to put him in with a unit of breachers just to make him that much more deadly, and he works out fantastic there. He's really a decent unit, and honestly, one of my favorite of the Tech Priest in the book. So I think I'm going to put the Tech Priest Manipulus as a great choice, because I think if you're looking for one of the cheaper characters in Adeptus Mechanicus, he's great to put with a unit, because he's just really effective at making a deadly unit that much more deadly. And like I said, really good with the Kataphrons, but you could also put him in a unit of Scutari. I wouldn't fault you for doing that. So I think he's a great choice. I think he can be really effective. And I think if you're taking any of the Tech Priest, this is the one that you really want to take. After that, we have the Tech Priest Dominus. And I'm not as high on the Dominus as I am the Manipulus. His abilities are okay, and he can make certain units way better. He's decent in the right detachments, and he's really good with things like Electro-priest, giving them a 4-up feel no pain. But the biggest issue there is that who really brings a lot of Electro-priest in their units? I could definitely see putting this guy in different detachments and using him. I don't really think he's mid. I think he's good in the right detachment or in the right rule set. But he is kind of borderline, if you ask me. Like, I much rather have the Manipulus than the Dominus, just because of the effects that both bring to the table. So I'm going to put him in good in the right detachment, although we may reassess later on in the list. Continuing on with the characters, we then have the Techno-Archaeologist. And I really think that the Techno-Archaeologist is really effective, and he's effective in a lot of different lists. His 12-inch deep strike denial bubble is really effective because I think as an Adeptus Mechanicus player, you don't want to have things dropping in behind your gun line. Your gun line is very important to you because you are kind of a fragile army for the most part, especially if you're playing something like an MSU or something like that. So you definitely don't want things deep striking in your backfield. You may not want things deep striking around your natural expansion. So he's really good for that. He also adds +1 to the OC for units that he's in. So I mean, he can make a 10-man Scutari 30 OC really, really hard to pull off there. I think the Techno-Archaeologist is great. I think he's a great choice. I think you should definitely, if you have the room, if you have the 45 points, build him into your list because you're going to get a lot more utility than 45 points out of him. I'll guarantee it, especially if you're using him in a Scutari unit to kind of hold down with OC. After that, we have the Scatros, and I was not very high on the Scatros when it was revealed. I wasn't high on it when we did this tier list back in January. I'm not super high on it now, but I am going to give it this one caveat. It does have Lone Op, which is awesome. I mean, Lone Op's really good, and it's a fantastic ability, and for an army like Ad-Mech, you might find a reason for that. I think that you're almost always going to have some kind of little, action unit to do things with so that you probably don't need the Scatros. That being said, I'm going to put it as mid. You might be able to convince me that, hey, I have a reason for this. I need the Lone Op. I need this. Okay, I can see it. Personally, I don't own the model, and I would probably not build it into my list, but I could be convinced otherwise. After that, we have the Tech Priest Engine Seer, and, on paper, the Tech Priest Engine Seer sounds really good. I think my biggest problem with the Tech Priest Engine Seer is there is no, vehicle detachment that he works with really well. I mean, I guess Cybernetica Cohort, I guess you could give me an argument that he might work well in there because you want to keep healing up those robots. Although, I want to make sure, I don't want to speak out of turn here, but I want to make sure that he can repair the robots. I think he can. I think they just have to be vehicles. I mean, in that instance, yeah, sure. I could be convinced in a Cybernetica Cohort detachment that he's decent, but to me, he's kind of just a mid-choice. He's probably better than the Scatros, honestly. He definitely will provide more value in a vehicle-heavy list than a Scatros ever would. So, for that reason, I'll put him ahead of the Scatros, but I think he's just mid. We then move on to our battle line units, and first up we have some Scutari Vanguard, and the Vanguard are just good. I mean, they're a battle line unit, and not only that, Battleline for the Adeptus Mechanicus means so much because so many abilities are built on having that Battleline unit nearby. So, I can't think of a list that I have not put some Scutari in, and I think for that reason, both of these units are auto-includes. The Vanguard are really good at holding down objectives and keeping your opponent from getting them with their rad ability. The Rangers are awesome too because they have a scout move. They can sticky an objective, which is really nice. And you can really load these out with a lot of different weapons. For the both units, they can take a couple of different special weapons, and you can kind of really specialize these squads. They're almost like guard infantry in a way. And actually, I'm cooking up a list with my Adeptus Mechanicus using a lot of Scutari to try to leverage some of those units. So that may be coming to the channel soon as well. But I think they're an auto-include because, again, what list doesn't have some Scutari in it? Maybe if you're playing the Electro-priest detachment, sure. But who plays that detachment? I mean, I haven't seen it. And again, I don't purport to see everybody's list, but it's not a popular detachment. And I would have bet even in those lists, they're going to be bringing these Scutari infantry. So yeah, auto-include all the way when you calculate how good they are, that they're battle line, that our entire army kind of clicks with battle line units for some reason. So yeah, I think you're going to be putting these in every single list you build. Moving on to the Sicarian infantry. First up, we got those Sicarian infiltrators, and the infiltrators are decent. They're not super killy, but they can get up into space early with their infiltrate ability. They can also battle shock an opponent if they get into them with their voices in the code, and if they're close to battle line, they get -2 to that result as well. They're a really decent unit. I think they're good for like staking out some space between your Adeptus Mechanicus gun line and your opponent's army. And I think you're going to be including them in a lot of lists. And I don't just think it's going to be Hunter Cohort. I personally think they're a great choice. And I build them into a lot of lists because I want to play that infiltrate game. And everybody out there should be. If you have access to infiltrators, you should be thinking about putting them in your list and trying to win that infiltrate battle early with your opponents. It's a really effective strategy, and I think that the infiltrators are really up to making that work. They're really fast. They can get up into space quick. They can move through walls because they're infantry. Their taser goad loadout is pretty good, especially against lighter infantry. You can really slap your opponents around with the infiltrators. So I think they're really good. As for the Rust Stalkers, yes, they've improved with rules over 10th edition, and I like using them, but I can't say that they're a super great choice. They're only damage 1, which is okay. I can live with them being only damage 1, but for some reason they just fail to live up to what I need them to do. They're really cheap. They can really slap into the right unit. I think a 10-man brick can be kind of deadly, but it doesn't. There's no survivability in the Rust Stalkers. Like I said, they're really fast. You can get them up in the combat really well. They do kind of work in a couple of different detachments. I'm going to put them in good in the right detachment. They're definitely ahead of these two units here, but they're hard to make work sometimes. And into more melee heavy armies, they just don't hold up. And the dev wound ones are good in the right circumstance. And I think in a Hunter Cohort, yeah, you're bringing Rust Stalkers. In Halo's Creed, yeah, I could be convinced that you're bringing Rust Stalkers. Rad Cohort, maybe less. It really depends. Probably want to go more on the Sicarians there. So, yeah, I'm going to put them at good in the right detachment. Next up, we have our first new unit from what we didn't have back in January, and that is the Servitor Battleclade. Now, I took a look at this, and actually I was gifted this unit from a friend of mine. Thank you very much, Drew. And they're an okay unit. My biggest problem with the Servitor Battleclade is they seem to be filling a role that Ad-Mech didn't need filled. Their ability to like shoot and advance and do actions is good, but I find that in my Adeptus Mechanicus games, I'm not wanting for action monkeys or a unit that's okay at shooting to still be able to do actions. Like, I just don't need that. I have a lot of smaller MSU type units that are behind walls and can do actions. So the Battleclade kind of just doesn't fill a role for me. But I could be convinced otherwise. I think maybe I got to get them out on the table and see how they do. But just on the surface, I just don't think that they're really satisfying a role. And for that, I'm just going to put them at mid for now. Maybe in a couple of months, I get a couple of games with them. We may reassess, but I think for right now, they're probably just mid. And we'll see where they land as they work their way through the meta. After that, we have the birds. First up, we have the Skystalkers. Skystalkers are great. They're super cheap. They can come down from Deep Strike. They can move block because they have an ability to shoot and move and can move really far if they're near battle line. they're just an all-around great unit, really good for scoring. They don't survive very long, and they're kind of hard to hide because of their wings, but I think they're pretty good. I mean, me personally, I like to build them in a lot of different lists just for their utility of move blocking, deep striking, maybe being able to get into an area that the rest of my Adeptus Mechanicus can't. They're really good for that. The components to that are then the Firebirds, the Sterilizers. They're good. I don't think they're as good as the Sky Stalkers, but they're pretty decent. You can get a lot out of them. They can roast lighter infantry with the ability to reroll wound rolls if they're near Battleline, which is really nice. Like, they can be a really decent unit to use, but I just don't think they're as good as the Sky Stalkers, and it's really not the little bit higher points cost for them. I just think that the ability to shoot and move with a unit like this is better than, kind of a Overwatch threat that you can deep strike somewhere. So I'm going to put them in good in the right detachment, and I'm going to put them right behind the Rust Stalkers there. So they're not bad, but definitely not as good as the Sky Stalkers. Looking at the Electro-priest here, we have the Fulgurites first. And, I have a unit of 10 Fulgurites, and I do like to build them into a list every once in a while, but in terms of competitive meta, they're not exactly the best thing. With a Dominus, you can keep them alive for a really long time. They'll be -1 to wound. They'll have a 4-up invul, or a 5-up invul, 4-up feel no pain. But they're only 1 wound, so damage can really take them out quick. That being said, they have decent attacks, but where they really shine is in the Electro-priest detachment, where they get an extra attack. But, base 2 attacks just isn't that great. They're really hard to keep alive. They can get cut down in cover, even with all the abilities and a Dominus with them. I haven't really played with them in a while, so I'm going to put them at Dusty. They're just not being used, and maybe I'm just not into those kinds of lists right now, but I don't really see them in any list in the meta. I don't see people talking about them. Cool looking models, but they're just sitting on the shelf. Next, then we have the Corpuscari, and I know some people are higher on the Corpuscari. I'm not really. Its attack profile, although strength 5 with sustained, it's just, there's no AP on it. Again, they kind of suffer from the same problem that the Fulgurites do, is that even with a Dominus, they can fold to some pretty heavy shooting. They're not super great in melee, I guess, unless they're going at lighter infantry. Yes, there could be a place for them. They are way better in the Electro-priest detachment, but this is not a detachment that's super popular and that people are taking, and I think they're probably just Dusty. Are they better than the Fulgurites? To me, they're not. And the reason for that is that, Ad-Mech doesn't really want for that type of shooting. We can get those kinds of things from, our Sicarians and from our Scutari stuff like that. Whereas we kind of do want a little bit better melee and stuff like that. And it's a little bit easier to keep the Fulgurites alive because they get the -1 to wound and the 5-up, 4-up with a Dominus. So I'm going to put them slightly ahead just for that reason. We then move on to the Hounds of Hell. We have the Cerberus Raiders, and these are pretty decent units. They have a scout move. They have their Tactica Obliqua strategy or ability where they can do a move after an enemy unit ends a move near them, which can be really good for things like move blocking if you're kind of trying to do a prison strategy. They're decent, and Hunter Cohort for sure, because they get all the abilities because they're mounted. I think that, the Raiders are a pretty decent unit. They're probably only good in the right detachment. Like I said, Hunter Cohort, maybe something like a Rad Bombardment. I could see that. But they're not exactly, lighting the world on fire with their ability. They don't really hit very hard. But they can do a lot of things. They can get up into space. They can get up to they can move quickly into an enemy objective if they need to kind of score points or do like something like area denial early in the game that you don't mind losing them for. So, in that case, quick, speedy, can kind of move block at least vehicles from passing through between terrain pieces. I think that's pretty good. Then there's the Sulfur Hounds. They are, to me, not as good. They do have a line breaker ability, which I think they're probably better in a unit of 6 than in a unit of 3 because they're on a pretty small base. You probably could get a lot in from a 6-man unit with their line breaker ability. Is not bad. They do have a small anti-vehicle melee weapon, so if they do get into melee with the line breaker ability into a vehicle, they could probably do some damage into it. That being said, I don't really think they're worth bringing in when we have other things to deal with vehicles. We have other things to kind of move up into space and deal with, enemy units or blocking them off. The mortal wounds from the line breaker ability is great and all. Yes, in a hunter cohort, I could definitely see using these guys, but I think you'd probably go with the Rangers over the Sulfur Hounds. I could be wrong. Let me know what you think down in the comments. I'm going to put them at mid, but they're kind of borderline. Like, again, I could be convinced that they could be used, but, I don't see them a lot, and I don't have a lot of experience with their abilities, so I'm willing to be wrong here if people want to let me know what their experiences are down in the comments. Now to the Kataphrons, and first we're going to start with the Breachers. Now, the Breachers are a very unique unit. They're very good. They have a lot of great abilities. They have a really good anti-vehicle weapon. They have a really good reroll mechanic where they get rerolls of hit rolls of 1. They can also get full rerolls if they're near a Battleline unit, which is really nice. They're infantry, so they can go through walls. But they're a little expensive. They're 165 points. They're difficult to use, in my opinion, because to get the max out of their shots, you want to be within the 12-inch rapid fire range, which can be difficult on a unit that only moves 6. That being said, though, they're such a unique piece in the Ad-Mech army, and they can do so much, especially if you link them up with a Manipulus to give them lethal hits. They can be really, really dangerous, and they're not bad in melee as well with their arc claws. So I think that they're a great choice. You're probably not including them in every single list, but you're including them in a lot of different detachments. As for the destroyers, they've definitely gotten better over the edition, but they're not quite where the Breachers are. I think they're really good in something like Halo's Creed with the enhancement that allows them to reroll hazardous tests on their plasma culverins. That can be really nice. Again, something with a Manipulus in Halo's Creed, they can be really effective. 3-man, 6-man. They even have that cheeky being able to do Overwatches on 5s. I think that's really effective as well. So they've definitely gotten better, but they're not exactly making it into every single list. So I think they're just going to be good in the right detachment. Looking ahead, we have the Ironstrider Ballistari, and the Ballistari has definitely gotten better with the improvements that we saw to Ad-Mech later last year. They've gone down in points, I believe, since the last data slate that we've seen them, so they're really good, and I was even tempted to put them in an auto-include. However, I do build list without them, so to me, they're really just a great choice, but I think they're good either variant. The las cannon variant's really good, and the auto cannon variant is pretty good too, and even mixing matching the two, depending on what your opponent might be bringing, can be really effective firepower. They're really hard to lock down. They're really decent tank shock target. I mean, I know they're only T7, but 7 dice, each 5 and 6 cause an immortal. I'm willing to give it a try. So I really like the Ballistari. They work in a lot of different lists, not just Hunter cohort. So I think that they're a great choice. Then we have the Dragoons. And, I have really tried to make the Dragoons work a lot. I have put a lot of effort into trying to make these Dragoons work. And they're just not awesome. They're good against very particular targets, but they're not good in groups because of their base size. They're decent on an individual level if you're running an MSU type list, but honestly, they just don't really seem to perform the way that I want them to, and I really, really want them to. I think there might be the right list out there, maybe even the right detachment, but I think there is a list out there where they could work, but to me, just having like a list out in the ether that they might be decent in is kind of mid. That being said, I enjoy the unit and I think it's okay. So there might even be a place for it. It's borderline. Honestly, I know there's a lot of people out there that really like the Dragoons, but I mean, they're close to mid. They're close to mid. I think they maybe just need more attacks. I know that they can get more with the sustained hits, but and they're decent against walkers, but it's just not super effective. I wish they were a little bit better. So yeah, I think they're just good in the right detachment. Now looking at the Castellan robots, and I think no unit has improved more over the edition than the Castellan robots. They recently got the army ability stapled to them, so you no longer need to have some fancy enhancement or be in the right detachment. They now can work in any and all detachments. Now, they're still pricey, but you get a lot for what the unit does. I think, they're really good in their Cybernetica cohort. They're a really good option still in Halo's Creed, but I think that they've gotten to a point where they can be useful in a lot of different lists. A 2-man unit, a 4-man unit, it doesn't really matter. I think that the robot is a great choice, and I'm going to put it in the great choice category. After that, we have the Cybernetica Datasmith, and the reason why I didn't include the Cybernetica Datasmith with all the characters is because I wanted to talk about it after we talked about the robots. On its own, the Cybernetica Datasmith is a mid model, but in conjunction with the robots, it is absolutely necessary to have. Being able to change the protocols on the robots is absolutely key. I'm going to link it in great choice, but honestly, this model itself is essentially useless without the robots. So we're going to put it in great choice just because its pair model is in there, but that's why it's getting that grade. We're now going to look at the tanks for the Adeptus Mechanicus, and first up is the Onager Dunecrawler. And honestly, I really enjoy the Onager Dunecrawler. It is a really decent fighting unit. It has a 4-up invul, which is really nice. It has a lot of different weapon options. It even works really well with our Scutari, giving them a 4-up invul as well. So I think that it's a really good unit. That being said, is it being built into every single list that I build? No. I do think that it's a good choice, but I think it's the type of unit where you gotta have like a plan for it. I mean, yes, if you just need a tank, you're probably going to want to go with the Scorpius Disintegrator. But if you're looking for something that can provide a lot of firepower, hold down a particular area, be really tough with smoke and a 4-up invul, and also help buff your Scutari infantry like you're bringing a lot of them, maybe in a hunter cohort, I think it's a really good model. I don't necessarily think it's the greatest of choice at all times, so I'm going to put it in good in the right detachment. I could definitely be convinced to put it in a great choice because I really, really enjoy having the Onager Dunecrawler around. After that, we have the Scorpius Disintegrator, and I think if you're going to go for a pure tank in this army, it's got to be the Scorpius Disintegrator. That's not to say that you want to include it in every single list, but it's an absolute great choice. And I think that you need to have a little bit more anti-tank than just the chickens. So the Scorpius Disintegrator is really good. It doesn't really care about what Doctrina you're using because it gets +1 to hit against monsters and vehicles. So for that reason alone, I think it's just the best bang for your buck tank in the army. Next up, we have the Dune Rider, and I think that if you're running Skitarii, you're going to be running at least one or two Dune Riders to help get them up the board, especially if you're looking for those Skitarii to get up into a forward position and get on some objectives and use that 2OC to kind of lock it down. So, I mean, if you're bringing them with every Skitarii list, you're probably going to be auto-including them in any list that you build. It's kind of cheap to say, but like we have such a need in the army for our battle line units. We need that dedicated transport. It's good at transporting other things, but personally, if you're not transporting something like Electro-priest to help keep them alive longer, you're definitely going to be transporting your Skitarii. And since your Skitarii is going to be in almost every list, or every list that you build, why not have the Dune Rider there? Finally, we're going to loop in all of the flyers into one single screenshot here, and we're going to put them in Dusty. They're just not that great. They do have hover, so you can bring them in like they don't have the aircraft keyword early on, but they're kind of overpriced for what they do. The transport one, I'd rather just have the Dune Rider, so that's really why they're just sitting in the Dusty pile. So I went ahead and kind of ranked these in terms of what I think the best in each category is. So you can go ahead and take a look at that. But let me know what you think the best unit in the Ad-Mech Codex is. Go ahead and like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. We got a lot of videos planned. We got a lot more tier lists coming out. We're going to be concluding our 40K Summer League battle recap series here in a little bit. So please make sure you come back for some more Wounded on Sixes. Thanks for watching.